Here we go.
Hi everyone, I'm Nantah from Three Sacred Energies, and Danielle is with me also this morning. We work together, we are business partners, and we're very good friends, been for a long time. Today we are here to share with you a special story about an amazing man. And today, from even 2 years ago when we first did the healing with him, still today, I am still amazed that this man of, at the time, was 91 years of age, who absolutely welcomed the healing and remains open to our frequency healing. So he's a long-time friend of Danielle's. She's known him, a very long time. And so I'd like you to pick up the story about this amazing man, Danielle, and start to share his journey with everyone.
Oh, thank you, Nanta. Yes, it's certainly a story worth sharing. And it was the soul reawakening healing that had an enormous impact on his life. So the background story was my friend had a heart attack. And of course, like many people, was Googling Dr. Google to see if he was having a heart attack or not. And of course, being rather stubborn and probably a little bit afraid, decided, no, that's not me. No, I'm not having one. Anyway, so he was, and eventually his wife took him to the hospital and they did an emergency stint into the heart. So for him, it was a huge shock because he really has enjoyed fantastic health. He's taken care of himself along the way, but really, this was probably the second major thing in his life. He had prostate back in 25, 30 years ago, but since then, there was really nothing, just maintenance. So he was really blessed with that and taking care of himself. And then this out of the blue. So, of course, being at that age, one is facing their mortality far more readily, shall we say. Anyway, so after he went through that procedure, and of course his expectation was, okay, well, I'll just pick up where I left off and everything will be great. Well, everything wasn't great. And these things, as people know, they take a lot out of one physically, and emotionally and psychologically. So he really was struggling. And I would say he'd really gone into a spiral of depression and very fatalistic in the sense of, well, my body's failing me. What's the point of me carrying on if I can't do my gardening, if I can't function and be of use? Because he does a lot of charity work, has done that since his retirement. Um, so I'm no use to anyone. So, very fatalistic, very pessimistic. And it was very sad to see, very, very sad. And I think he struggled with that himself. Of course, his wife did as well. And so spoke to Nanta and then consulted with Spirit, and the soul reawakening is what was advised for him. Now, I spoke to him about energy healing, and he just was like, I'm open to anything. He says, I'm happy. He says, yep, you can give me some energy. You can do whatever you want. I trust you. I'm available. And we were like, wonderful. So the healing was done.
And that's what amazes me to start with this man, 91 years of age, and he said, I'm just open. But
Mm,
I've been in this field of healing, psychic development, spiritual development, because I'm a medium, I'm a psychic medium, trance channel healer, have been for 30 years, more than 30 years. And
mm,
usually we are the ambulance at the bottom of the hill.
yeah.
But for this man, we weren't quite at the bottom of the hill because we were the next stop after his hospital stop. And that
Yeah.
is really, truly amazing. And still today, I say all kudos for him because he's remained open. He's followed our advice to the letter, and he
Yeah.
still does 2 years later. And that's
Mm,
truly amazing. And I just want through this discussion for people to understand it's never too late to have your
no.
healing because your quality of life truly matters. And
Mm,
as you get older, your quality of life matters even more
yeah.
because you find as you get older, there are things that suddenly you cannot do that you used to be able to do. And that is really quite devastating. It does knock
Mm,
your confidence, especially when you've been such a confident person. And this man is a businessman, like he's been a dentist all his life. That was his
mm,
career, helping
yeah.
people, and when he retired, he's helping the community, doing loads of charity work and everything. So he's the one that has always been given. And this is a really important factor to remember. When you are a giver, you must take time to refuel yourself because who
Yes.
gives to you? And I find that givers have trouble in receiving. And
Yeah.
so this is a lesson that we've had to learn. I've had to learn it. Danielle's had to learn it to
Mm,
receive, and we receive and give to each other because we're both natural givers and we're both very compassionate. So for this man, he had a big wake up call, which a lot of people do. It brings them to the point of facing their mortality. And that's the next important part I want Danielle to share with you is about how he felt about that. Yeah.
yes. Oh, thanks, Nantah. Yes. Quality of life. It is everything. It is
Yeah.
everything. So yes, so the healing was done, the soul reawakening healing was done. And so I just kept in touch, and he was very grateful. He was like, oh, he said, yeah, I feel a little bit better. And we said, look, it's going to take time for this energy. Your body's been through a big trauma. Because
Mm,
he's like mentally, no, I should be here, but my vessel is here. Like there's this huge disparity. Um, and so a couple of months passed, and I just kept in touch, how things were going, etc. And he was making, feeling a little bit better and getting back out into the garden. And we told him, you must be grounded. Be grounded. He was on limited amounts of fluid initially,
mm,
but then that started to subside. He was also very frustrated going to the cardiologist because they they said, oh, you're ticking all the boxes, everything was fine, the procedure
mm,
was excellent, yes, you've done well, everything's great, all the readouts are perfect. And he goes, well, why am I in such a state?
mm,
Why and he was just spiraling downwards. So there were no answers. The medical profession couldn't give him answers, but they, of course, they saved his life. So the recovery, as we know, can be really very brutal. So we did the healings, which is, like there's 3 healings over a period of time. So kept in touch. And then one day I called and I spoke to his wife. And she said, oh, he's out in the garden doing this and everything. She said, I said, oh, that's great. She said, oh, no, he's doing really well. And I said, wow. I said, okay, what's happening? And
mm.
she just said, she paused and then she said, it's a miracle. She said, it is truly miraculous. I said, well, what's happening? She said, it is like a 360-degree reversal. And she said, it's almost like he's better than he was before. And I said, wow. So he's up in the
Mm,
morning at 7 a.m. out in the garden, because of the heat and everything, does the morning gardening, etc. He used to be going to a little, like a rehab gym and things like that. And she just said, the depression is just gone. And his whole mental attitude has changed. And he's physically doing better, still a few limits, which he gets frustrated with. But she said he does forget that he's 91. Um, And so she was astounded because she said I had accepted that my husband was probably in those later years going to be very restricted. And then I would have to be doing more, etc., and change my lifestyle to accommodate and take care of him. And I said, oh, right. But she said, honestly, she said, she said, it is miraculous. And I just said, this is wonderful. I mean, it's just wonderful to hear that he's turned around. So, I mean, Nantah did the regression in the healing, in the soul reawakening healing, which revealed the reason, a profound reason why he had an enormous fear of death. And this was compounding with his mental well-being. Of course, he had a almost paralyzing fear of death, and being faced with one's mortality after such a medical incident, it's a bit of a snowball, really, when you think about it. So Nantah revealed this whole past life where the trauma began and his profound fear of death began. So do you want to share a bit of that, Nantah, or?
Well, absolutely. I mean, past lives are pretty amazing. That'll be a whole other conversation that we
I
will
know,
have
but touch on
about past
it.
lives.
The
That's for
highlights, the
sure.
good
That is
bits,
to come.
the you know.
But for this gentleman, this is part of the Soul ReAwakening Program. It is the second healing session. So what happens is that I connect directly with the person's soul, and our frequency healers are with us at the time, and together we escort or go with the soul when back to the lifetime where the suffering or the traumas in that life, in that particular life, began. So it does not matter whether you have lived 5 lives, 10 lives, 20 lives. Each one of them is going to have the influence from where the trauma began at the first one, where you experienced that. So for this gentleman, when his soul was so keen to do this, because the souls know we are there to end the suffering and to completely eradicate the traumatic imprints that are left within the soul, so that it does not have to keep reliving it from lifetime to lifetime, completely frees the soul altogether. So when we went back, it was a horrendous scene where he fought about his wife. His wife had been brutally treated and raped, and so he was there fighting for her. A very, very traumatic scene, but the soul doesn't relive it, but the soul, we keep the soul protected, and it just watches, like watching a movie, with a different understanding, and then the healing process that follows that can come into play. So for him, he had that profound fear of death because he was killed in a very tragic situation, and many souls are. And so this is why the Soul ReAwakening Program is so vital to set souls free, to be able to express who they truly are, the love, the light, and talents, gifts, and abilities they bring to earth. For this gentleman at his age, the main profound effect for him in his life is that huge fear of dying was completely eradicated. He was at peace. His soul was totally at peace. The fragments of the soul are retrieved and healed at that time, so it makes the soul whole and complete once again, so that its light can shine and it brings back more joy, it brings back peace and happiness within. And so this is what happened to him. And this is what happens to everyone when they do the Soul ReAwakening program. The deeper peace within the self, that the suffering has gone, and the soul can start to live as it is here to live. So for him, it has brought a lot of joy back into his life. He thoroughly enjoys his garden, which he absolutely loves. And here he is, he's almost 93 years of age. So here we are 2 years later, and this
Yep.
man is doing fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that was interesting because that was back American Indian time. So
Yes,
it
it
was
was.
many, many lifetimes ago. So the
Mm.
soul would have carried that burden right through up until it was healed.
Yes,
Yes,
definitely.
yes, yeah. So he's very comfortable with the discussion about death, and it's like, oh well, when I leave, no problem, not an issue. Yeah, when I leave, it's someone else's problem, not mine, which is quite remarkable coming from someone who was really paralyzed about talking about
Fair.
fear and facing that. So since then, we've just, kept in touch and, heard about more positive things happening. And then it was last year, we're to 2025, he had a couple of tick bites being in the garden. And he noticed that um, his sleep changed, and he wears a monitor. And he was waking up, and he was waking up like 15, 20 times a night. And he didn't consciously wake up all the time, but his body wasn't resting. And he was doing a lot of research on this. And of course, um, the information that came through, we checked with Spirit, and they said, treat it like Lyme's disease. Treat it like Lyme's disease. Because he was frustrated, and he just said, I know the neurotoxins go in and they affect the tissue in the brain, etc., etc. So again, we consulted with Spirit, and I said, well, we'll see what Spirit can suggest. And he's like, yep, I'm open, no problem. And so a neurological healing was done, and that was well received. And then um, he was feeling good, but still the sleep was still not. Um, I guess we just say, well, not 100%, but not changed substantially enough. And then, and then Spirit said a heart healing was needed. And we were like, oh, not another neurological healing. It was like, no, a heart healing. So off we went, did the heart healing. And then he shared some data. He sent a text and he said, oh, there is hope. And on the text was a little summary graph, and it only had one bar that showed that he was awake during one night of sleep. And that was less than a week after doing the heart
So we
healing.
can, yeah.
And we just went, wow. And he sent another graph I said, well, what did it look like before? Because he hadn't shown us. And it was like, like 20 or 30 little red lines, all spiking, showing he was awake. And I said, wow. So I said, okay, well, just keep your records and keep us posted. But you could tell in his voice he's stronger and definitely more grounded, more grounded. And so, yeah, we're just continuing to monitor that, which is quite wonderful. So, yeah, he's like, yeah, sure, yeah, I know the routine. I'll just go and lay down and, let me know when it's over. Keep hydrated and grounded. And he's like, yep, no problem. And there you go. So about to turn 93, and things were looking quite grim a few years ago, but he's very, very happy and very comfortable. Of course, he does think he's a 30-year-old. And wonders why he
Yeah.
has an older body, but he just has to accept that that's the stage of life he really is in. But I think probably a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah. And we're just delighted. I'm very excited and very grateful that we were able to help him with a better quality of life, and particularly for that paralyzing fear of death to be eliminated, because death is actually not painful at all. It's a beautiful experience, and we'll talk to you about that at another time. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy listening to what our clients experience. It's important to know their stories. So please hop on our website, www.3-sacred-energies.com, and look up Soul ReAwakening. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.